Hey everyone, welcome to Two Car Pros. My name is Ryan, and today I'm going to show you exactly how to EFI swap your old hot rod. So we're going to be taking a very common carburetor setup and go to a really awesome EFI setup. This is going to fix all kinds of cold starting or hard starting problems, or like if you have with me, a bog and die problem that I can't seem to quite get worked out, and this is going to be computerized and handle everything for me. It's going to be a breeze, and it's really not that bad to install. I bet you could do this in a weekend with no lift, no fancy tools. It is really that easy. Before we go any further, this video is sponsored by Summit Racing. They went ahead and sent over all the parts you see here in this video, and all the links down below are to Summit Racing. They are a great sponsor, an awesome company to work with. They have great returns, great products, and are all around the place to get your speed parts. So make sure you get them from summitracing.com. So let's go ahead and bring your car into the future with Summit Racing. So here I am in the driver's seat of my 67 Camaro. I'm going to start it, and it's going to be a cold start. I haven't started the car before. You have to give it a couple pumps of gas. A little rough to start sometimes. And then I have to keep it alive. If I don't keep it alive, and put it in gear, it wants to stall and turn off. It's like on the cusps of doing that. See, that's not good. So I'm hoping the EFI helps us out on that. Well, let's go ahead and take it for a drive, and I can show you another problem it has. So a problem this car has always had, is when you give it some gas off the line, the accelerator pump has never caught up with it, and it always bogs. And I've had it professionally tuned by a race shop. They were supposed to handle it all, but I don't think it's their fault. I think the emulsion block in it, there's something wrong with it. Watch. See, it just bogs and dies. You give it a little throttle, bogs and dies. Every single time since I've had this carburetor, I think there's something inherently wrong with it. Maybe it's too much fuel, maybe it's swamping out, but either way, there's something not happy with it. The motor doesn't like the carburetor. If I really wanted to, I could work with the carburetor and get it just right, but I think there's a better solution, and that's to bring it into the future with Summit Racing. So before we get started, let's lay out exactly how our fuel system is going to go. I promise it's really simple and easy. So starting over here with our fuel tank, we're going to go the route where we use a new fuel tank. There are different systems where you can reuse your old one with a little bit of modification, and then you maybe could use an external pump, and that's a totally cool way to go, but those are usually a little bit noisier, they don't last as long, and honestly I don't think they're as slick. I think this is the way to go, where the pump is inside of the tank, and we have that right here, send and return. We have our vent. I have that blocked off because I have a vented cap, but if you don't have a vented cap, you're going to have to install the vent there with a rollover valve that's included with the kit. And our sender has already been installed with our send and ground. And of course, the link is down below in the description to this tank, and that tank is going to be bespoke to your hot rod. We have a 67 Camaro, and that tank is bespoke to it. So, make sure you do your homework on that, whatever car you are working on. And I've already installed the pump and the sender, and there's a link down below in the video to exactly how you do that. It's exactly the same as when we did it on our Bel Air, and I thought showing it twice would make this video much too long. Back to the send and return. So how are we going to, hook all that up? The send's really easy. It comes out of the send line into our Dash 6 fittings, made by Summit Racing, link down below in the description, and it's going to go into this fitting here on our filter regulator, again made by Summit Racing, and it is down below in the description. Goes into here. Here's the return. Return comes out into the return of the tank. This regulates the fuel pressure from here from, I believe it's 67 psi down to 58 psi, and there's no adjustability. It's just 58. That's what you get, which is exactly what our system needs. And of course, that is going to be hooked up by our Dash 6 AN line. And again, made by Summit Racing, and the link is down below in the description. And the star of our show is our EFI system. This can handle up to 550 horsepower, which is probably right about what our big block is making. And the adjustability of this is going to make this car an absolute dream, and I can't wait to get this box open and installed on our Camaro. But before we do that, let's go ahead and work from the back of the vehicle to the front. So let's install our new gas tank. Before we get started, before we do anything on the car, let's go ahead and unplug. We'll move our negative battery terminal cable. Usually you have to loosen it. Mine's already been loose. And we're going to store that away. That'll ensure that we don't actually ground out or anything bad happen to us. So that's a nice safety for us. So we're underneath the vehicle now. This is the front of our stock gas tank. And I've already disconnected our old fuel line. So on an old carbureted car, there's only one fuel line. You don't need a return. And I've already disconnected that. And we can remove this fuel line from the vehicle. Yours is going to look a teeny bit different. I already have dash 6 line in there. But I used it for carburetor. And it's just a barb fitting to dash 6. That's no good. We're going to have to redo that. So yours is probably just going to be a regular line like this rubber line here, and you can honestly probably just cut it off and then just rip the rest of the fuel line out. You can't use it. So again, we're underneath the vehicle. We can see our carbureted style gas tank and the straps that hold it in place. Yours might look a little bit different, but the principle is going to be exactly the same. I have it supported with my transmission jack. The gas tank is empty, and if you need to know how to siphon gas from your gas tank safely, there's a short down below in the description. They'll teach you a nice quick trick on how to do that. So mine has 9/16 nuts holding the straps in place. Yours might be different. It might be a little challenging to get off for you, but just keep at it. Maybe spray some WD-40 on the threads, and you should be good. There we go. And be careful getting the straps off there, because once the straps are gone, the tank can come down if you have any gas in there. It's heavy, it might hurt, so be careful. And doing this on the ground is actually easier because it can only fall so far. So you can bend the straps. You can actually just bend the straps out of the way so they're not a problem, because our new tank came with new ones anyway, because our new tank's a little bit different. And then we can hold on to it and carefully let it down. Oh yes, very good. So next, before we put the tank down all the way, we need to remove the ground for the sender. Yours will have this as well. Mine's a 5/16. We'll get that ground out of there so no surprises later. So now we're on the very top of the gas tank. We've dropped it enough to where we can kind of snake our hand in here. And here's the actual signal wire for your gas gauge. And we can usually you can just pull these off. Just like that. And now we can lower the tank down the rest of the way. Okay, so now we're ready to lower it down. Just support it, make sure it's not gonna fall. Mine's actually really light and easy to handle because I drained the tank down to nothing. Make sure it's not getting caught in any kind of wire. Yeah, and that's how you remove your gas tank. So our new tank actually came with new straps for the gas tank because it's a little bit deeper, so we gotta grab a 3/8 socket and remove our old ones. Your new gas tank will most likely come with new straps, and I do advise installing them because your old ones are probably no good, or they just won't fit. There we go. And there's two. So on the top of our new gas tank, I have our Summit Racing AN lines affixed to our Dash 6 fittings, and there's a link down below in the description in case you want to know how to put these hose ends on. And this is just a big old loop, because I don't know how long I want this loop just yet. So what we can do is just put on our send side and our return side. Then grab our Dash 6 wrench, a link down below in the description, and we're just going to tighten that up. And you just want to, wrist tight. Don't go Hulk on it. It's a tapered fitting, and it doesn't need like a ton of pressure, but you want it to be snug. That is perfect. So now we can put this up there and get our mock-up. So I've already lifted our fuel tank up into its home where it's gonna be, and I haven't put the straps on or anything yet because I'm just mocking it up. I wanna mock up where I want the regulator, so I have everything where it's gonna be, but not quite in a permanent fixture because I need to route these hoses the perfect length, so then I can cut them and put AN lines on them. So let's go ahead and do that. So with this regulator, you want it away from like the differential or something that gets hot or moves, and you want to set it up in such a way that it's kind of close to the tank. And I'm thinking right there is going to be just perfect. So I'm just going to tack screw it to the sheet metal, and I think we are going to be really set up nicely. So make sure the two are pointing back towards the tank, and the one is pointing towards where your fuel line is going to run up to the engine. Doesn't need to be Hulk tight. Bend that so, you know, it looks nice and tidy. And look at that. It's going to be so stealth. No one's going to even be able to tell that it's there. So on our regulator here, this is going to be our return. This is our pressure. So we're going to need to mount our lines accordingly. And I remember the one on the left is our return. So we're going to have it up there, and we're going to kind of pretend like it's in the fitting. So probably like right here. Pretty good. That's where we're going to cut that one. And then this one, give the same exact treatment. Mark, mark, mark. And we are good to take the tank back out, take the lines off, and put the AN lines fittings on the line. So again, we're gonna lower down our tank because our mock-up is all finished on exactly where we want that regulator. And we can put our lines on. So with our gas tank out of the way, we can put on our new gas tank straps that came with our tank. I'm gonna show you how to do one. And it's the same process for both. So you hook it through there, and then these kind of screw bolts that come with it, you're gonna send those through into the other side. There we go. And now we just do this, the same thing for the other one, and then we can go grab our gas tank. So here is what our space that our gas tank is going to take up looks like. You can see these two runners here and here, they're like little grooves. These set into grooves on your tank. Here's our fill neck. My fill neck doesn't actually come out with the tank. Some do, some don't. That's gonna kind of be up to you to discern that. This is the signal wire for the sender. So we're gonna have to splice that into the pink wire on our tank, or whatever color you decided to pick. But barring that, all we have to do is put the tank straight up like this and get the filler neck into this rubber bit on mine. I'm gonna go ahead and lube the inside of this as well. That way the gas tank will just kind of push up on there really nice and easy. So before we put the gas tank in for our final time, to make sure that everything is nice and attached, the ground, our sender, the power, and the ground for our pump, our two AN lines that I've already terminated, and this thing is ready to be installed. So now we can put our fuel tank up for the hopefully last time. And we just want to put that where it is going to go on those runners I showed earlier. I've also laid the sender wire on the top of the tank, and I will wire that at the front in my particular instance. It might be different for you, so just kind of, you know, assess the situation. And go slow. You don't want to damage your car or your tank. Okay, so my tank is right up where it wants to be. It's lined up on the filler neck rubber bit just there. So what I can do now is take my straps and bend them around, put them on their homes, and at least just get the nuts started by hand for both sides. With our safety nut on, we can actually remove our transmission jack, or buddy or helper or whoever's holding it. So we have our safety nuts on, gas tank's not gonna fall on us, and we can tighten those 9/16 nuts up. And you don't want to go nuts with these because you can actually crush your gas tank, and try to go as even as you can. All right, looks pretty good. So before we go any further, I'll draw some attention to this wire. That brown wire in my finger is actually the signal wire for our sender, and I've hooked it up to the pink wire off of our sender from our gas tank. So that's already taken care of. We're 1/4 of the way there on the wiring. Alrighty, pretty exciting moment. We get to hook up our fuel pump to our regulator filter. Here's our feed, this is our send. Now I'm gonna put it on the middle one, and then I have my -6 wrench. We're just gonna snug that up. Again, it doesn't need to be, oh my goodness, tight, just good enough. So then we can put the return on this one on the outside. And again, just snug it up so so you don't get any leaks. And there we go. And doesn't that just look like $1,000,000? Heck yeah. So future me here, and I actually have these on backwards when you guys saw them. So the send is actually on the outside and the return is on the inside. It made more sense to me that it was the other way around, but this is actually correct, so do it this way. So where you're looking now is the top of the gas tank is right here, and that feeds into our rubber hose connector that feeds into our fuel filler neck, and that's going to vary on car to car, the lengths, the diameters, how it's going to be set up, so that's up to your discretion. The only thing is you want to put a hose clamp on decently tight on both sides so you don't get a fuel leak. So that's what it looks like as a finished product. So what you're looking now is the back side of the tank facing towards the engine. Those are our AN lines, and I want to address your attention to the two grounds I have attached to the body, and the body is grounded to the frame, which is connected to the ground of the battery. So our fuel pump and our sender are now grounded, so 3/4 of our wiring for the fuel is done. The only thing we have left is the power for this, and that's going to come from our EFI kit, so don't worry about that guy just yet. So let's go ahead and focus on other things. So on your older engine, it's going to have most likely a mechanical fuel pump, and it usually looks something like this. It'll be on the side of your engine and based off either the crank or the camshaft, depending. And it only supplies 8 psi, which is why we did our whole fuel tank with the pump in it. That'll supply us with adequate psi for our EFI system. So this is completely useless, and you don't really want to leave it on because it'll make like a bunch of snorting noises, and it's just not good. So we're going to remove it and put a block off plate. So the first thing we can do is actually we can just cut this fuel line right here, and we don't need that anymore, so that's okay. Make it nice and easy on us, and then we can remove the bolts and remove the unit. I'm going to go ahead and remove. On mine, they're 9/16. Might be different for you, but usually there's just 2. Okay, there we go. And now, got a ratchet out of there. And then our old mechanical fuel pump up and out of the way. So what do you do with that big gaping hole in your engine? You can't just leave it. That's where this comes in. This is made by Summit Racing, and it's just a block off made of chrome. It's got my fingerprints on it. They also make them in a bunch of different colors and really cool styles. I've already cleaned off the mating surface, and I've left the fuel pump push rod in there. You can take it out if you really want to, but between you and me, it's not hurting anything sitting in there, and then I don't have to keep track of it. And in case I ever want to go back, it's in a nice convenient place. You can go ahead and replace our bolts. A nice tip I have for you is to use some spray adhesive on the gasket the plate came with to keep it in place so it doesn't run away from you. There we go. Block plate on. So what we're going to do is remove our air cleaner. Now the really cool part about this kit is we get to keep our 14-inch air cleaner, and it's going to look like a traditional hot rod. It's just going to be updated underneath. So we're actually going to reuse this guy. What we can do is remove our wing nut and then remove the entire air cleaner. So here is my carburetor. This is a Holley 4150. It is a quad barrel carburetor. It's really kind of the one you want, if you ask me, if you're going to go carburation. But since we're going EFI, it has to go. And basically, you want to take a look at your carburetor and see what's attached to it, and then simply remove it. So you see on mine, I have a transmission cable attached here. I also have, this is my mechanical throttle, so it's not drive-by-wire, it's actually a rod. And as it opens, fuel gets deposited and the butterflies open. And our EFI system is going to work very similarly to that, but we need to remove everything that connects it to the car, so let's do that. So the transmission one's pretty easy for mine. You just pull it forward and then off its mounting. So remove the Eddie clip from the back side, a little challenging to see. And some are held on with different provisions, so you're going to have to make that call on how that's going to get done. But mine should just remove just like that, and we are just one step closer. So now's the really exciting part. What we've been kind of working towards is, removing our carburetor. And I'm going to start by removing this 1/2-inch nut. Sometimes carburetors are held on with bolts, and it's exactly the same thing, just a different principle. I prefer the bolts on studs or nuts on studs arrangement like mine has. And actually on mine, it's a little special. I have this carburetor return spring actually mounted to the carburetor, so that needs to remove in my case, my return spring, and my TV cable arrangement. I'm actually not going to unbolt it because it'll basically go back on in the same spot, but with our new air fuel provisions. And then I can do the other nuts on the passenger side. Because mine has 6 fasteners. So with all our fasteners removed, all our nuts on the studs here, we can lift the carburetor straight up and out. And once the carburetor has cleared the opening, be very careful and don't drop anything down in the intake because that's wide open. One of those holes is going to be wide open down into your pistons. And whatever you drop is going to find its way down in there, guaranteed every single time. Don't even chance it. So sometimes carburetors are a little stucky, so you can just kind of wiggle them to break them loose. And then straight up and out of the way. So we're going to go ahead and remove our old gasket. We don't need that anymore. And I'm going to put a nice shop towel over the opening so nothing can fall down in there. So here is the very big moment. We get to unbox our EFI kit. And, you know, we've already done one of these on our Ford engine, but I figure we'll revisit it for this video as well. It's the exact same kit. And the reason I actually really wanted this exact kit is because my dyno guy, Joe, when we did the Ford video, said this was the best EFI kit, his words, not mine, best EFI kit he's ever used. And that's fortunate because this is a couple $100 less than the competition, and it performs better, so why not get this unit from Summit Racing? And of course, the link is down below in the description. Enough jabbering, let's get it open. All right, instructions, important, packaging, wiring harness, check this out. The wiring harness is already pre-labeled with everything we need to make the whole thing work. It even shows you the key, fuel pump, everything, and we're gonna go over where each and every one of these goes, so don't worry about it. This goes to our controller. Don't worry about that. We'll show you that later. It even comes with an O2 bung that you can weld in, or you could use hose clamps to affix it to your exhaust. I don't agree with this in a permanent fashion. Some people do that, but I like to weld it into our exhaust. Now, you could use the hose clamps and hold it on to your exhaust while you drive it to an exhaust shop and have them weld it. I support that. That's cool. I would do that. But yeah, I would always recommend welding it in. But you have that option available to you if you decide to do so. Some more support stuff. So let's go over it. Obviously, these are gaskets. Set those aside. Here is our actual control unit. This is what controls the brain, and there's a screen. You can use some gauges here on this, and we're gonna go over that. That's gonna be at the very tail end of what we're doing here today, and we'll be able to go over the software on that guy. Coolant temp senders in there. Here's the actual, and this is something that's kind of cool too. Here's the actual brain. This is the ECU. Look how small it is. It's like 2 decks of cards, maybe a little bit bigger than a regular deck of cards. This is tiny. Regular ECUs, even aftermarket ones, are massive. Think about our LS one. It was like 3 of these. It was huge and way thicker. And it has some holes that you can mount onto your firewall or underneath your dash or somewhere clever if you like. So we have this available for us. We're probably gonna put this either on our firewall core support. We'll find somewhere, you'll see. O2 sensor, you have to install this. It is not optional. USB-A to USB-C for our controller. This is a clamp for the controller, so you can mount this on your windscreen or maybe your dash, and then it opens up and it can hold that controller and, you know, hold it up for you in such a way that it's convenient. I'm not really gonna do that because my interior is not really done on my computer. I'm not really sure where I'm gonna wanna mount that. I might even just put it in the glove box and forget about it. And that's an adapter for the coolant temp sender. We're probably gonna need that, so don't lose it. And then the star of the show, my very own EFI hat from Summit Racing. Look at that! Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous, and it has everything you need to make your car run on EFI in this cute little unit, and it is going to absolutely rip. So let's take a quick tour of our unit. On the side here, we have a map sensor, absolutely essential for running an EFI. We have our throttle positioning sensor, and this is going to tell the computer, hey, where the throttle blades are at. Again, very essential.
On the back of our unit, we can see an idler air control valve, and we have some vacuum caps. I'm actually going to remove one because this is where I'm going to run the vacuum for our PCV. And we have our dash 6 fitting on this side. You could obviously swap it to the other side if you so choose, depending on your application, but I think it'll be okay there. Then we have our actual throttle linkage, and you can, put it where it makes most sense to you. And it has the return. It has a pretty firm return spring, so I'm not going to need to mount that return spring thing I had on my carburetor. That's plenty. And then on the front, there's ported vacuum and non-ported vacuum, and another one over here. You can see our little, you can see the little connectors for the fuel injectors right there, because it has 4 fuel injectors. Another thing I want to demonstrate as well, and what kind of makes this cool, one of the things, many things that makes this cool, is when you open the throttle, all the butterflies open at the exact same time. It's not like it has primary and secondary. They're all primary, so this thing's ready to rock. So now we can remove our terry towel, select our correct gasket in the correct orientation. I notice mine has kind of the thin sidewalls here on the intake, and then we can just, it should just really drop down on the flange here very easily, just like that. And now we can go grab our EFI hat. So now this is pretty cool. Make sure the throttle is on the driver's side, and then gently now, drop it down on top of there. Check that out. That looks amazing. So we can put our washers on our studs, or if you have bolts, same difference. And then we're gonna put the nuts on. We're not gonna tighten anything down just yet. So when you're tightening these two, don't go crazy on them. You're just into aluminum. You can pull the threads right out. It doesn't need to be on there with the strength of Zeus. And go in a cross pattern. Just snug it down with a 1/2-inch wrench. Just like that. That's all it needs. You don't need to go crazy on that. And check it out. Our EFI hat is installed on our engine, and I think it looks absolutely incredible. Now on the back side, on this vacuum right here, I'm going to plug in my PCV, because that is the only vacuum I actually need in this system. My other vacuum need is being met by my intake for my brake booster, so if you don't have that, you're going to plug it into the other one on the other side of the IAC. But that's all we need for right now. So we're back at our regulator, and I'm going to put on our feed line. This is going to go right to the back of the hat, the EFI hat. It's our dash 6, and I haven't terminated the other end yet, because I don't know how long it's going to be. It could be longer, it could be shorter. And I'm just going to create the line while it's in the car, that we don't have to take it back out. And however you run it up to your engine is up to you. Just keep it away from anything that gets hot or anything that moves. And just put it on wrist tight like that and run this up to the engine compartment. So as you can see, I've already hooked up my throttle linkage to our EFI solution. I've also put some tape on the top of it just to keep any kind of crud out of there. But back to the throttle linkage, it's already adjusted, and the reason I didn't film it is because it took a very, very long time, and it's going to be different per application. Most of the time, you're going to be able to just plop it back where your carburetor was and run your linkage to it, and you're good to go. I already have my TV cable hooked up and my throttle. When you do this, you just want to make sure that it can come back down to idle, which it's at right now, and it can go all the way full throttle without hitting anything. I know it kind of looks like this is hitting it, but it's not. I actually had to bend that out of the way. So this is looking awesome, and we're cruising right along. So the next thing we're going to worry about is our O2 sensor. I've already unhooked some bit of exhaust from my header collector. Truth be told, you could put it in your header collector, but I don't want to ruin the finish on my really nice headers, and this is just regular mild steel. I don't care about that. And besides, if I make a new exhaust in the future, I can just transfer the O2 bung to there. It's just a standard, I believe it's a 7/8 hole O2 sensor that came with our kit. Now, when you're mounting these, you want it at, you can even have it vertical if you want, but you don't want it underneath a horizontal angle. It needs to actually be 10 degrees above a horizontal angle, because if you mount it like this or even down just a little bit, water and moisture can build up inside of the O2 sensor and cause it to fail prematurely. So I like this angle. I've already done a little bit of imagination, in relation to my floor and my transmission, and I think this angle right here is going to work really well for us. So let's install our O2 sensor. So what we're gonna do first is, I've already marked it with my Sharpie right there. I'm gonna grab my center punch, and I'm just gonna create a little divot for my pilot drill bit to sit in. So next I'm gonna go ahead and drill our pilot hole. Awesome. Next I have my step bit linked down below in the description to one of these. You want a nice step bit, it'll just make your life a breeze, trust me. And actually I'm gonna go to 3/4, not 7/8, because I can always make the hole bigger if I feel like I need to. So we can do a test fit real quick. See, yep, our O2 sensor goes in there, and you don't want to make it too big, obviously, because then you might have a leak, and that's no good. So with our kit, there's actually 2 ways to go about mounting your O2 sensor. One I would call temporary, and the other I would call the right way to do it. So the first way is to get the gasket that came with the O2 bung and put it on like this. So this is the way I would say is a bit more temporary. They came with hose clamps, the flange is big enough for the bung that you're gonna be able to, put the kit together, put your O2 sensor in, tighten it down, and move on. Could you run the car that way? Sure, but would I run it that way as a permanent fix? No, I wouldn't. But it'd be really good to just get the car running, put this in here, and then you could take it to an exhaust shop and ask them to weld that in for you, and then I would call it a permanent solution. So I think this is a good way to go about a temporary way to get to an exhaust shop, but I have seen people run this as a permanent fixture. It's just not the way I'm going to do it. What I'm going to do is remove these hose clamps, remove the gasket, and weld the bung to the steel. So what I've done is threaded my O2 sensor into the bung already. That way when I drop it in, I can't accidentally offset it and the O2 sensor won't go in. Now, there are a million much better welders out there than me, especially here on YouTube, where you can learn how to weld in an O2 bung, really easily. I'm just going to do my very best and go from there. So how I'm going to start this is actually, I'm just going to tack it in place. There we go. And once it's tacked in place, I'm going to go ahead and remove my O2 sensor. There we go. Now I'm just going to finish weld the entire flange onto the pipe. So our O2 sensor bung is all welded in there. Is it the best job? No, but it's ugly and functional, kind of like me. Now we can put our O2 sensor in. It already has the anti-seize on there. There we go. Grab a 7/8 wrench and just snug it down. No, I don't have a torque spec for you. Just, one arm tight is perfectly good. And then I can just hook my exhaust back up, run the wiring to our O2 sensor, and this bit's done. So next we're going to focus on the coolant temp sender, and you absolutely need to have this, that way the computer knows how warm or cool the engine is. And I've already gotten mine out of the box and put the adapter in because I noticed that my stock fitting on my intake manifold is the big type, so it needs that adapter. Here's my stock sender. You can see it's already adapted up to the big size in my intake manifold, and I'm going to do this as fast as I can because what I want to avoid is draining the coolant completely. I want to make this as easy as possible, so I'm just going to take that out real fast and put the new one in real fast. I already have pipe tape on that, and we should be good, so let's try it out. This is a 7/8 socket. That wasn't too bad. Go ahead and thread in our new one. It's the size that came with the kit's actually 24mm, so a little bit different. We're just going to snug that guy down. And don't go crazy, especially if you have an aluminum intake manifold. You can crack them or pull the head, or pull the threads out rather, pretty easy. So, just, snug. It doesn't need to be like crazy tight. I wouldn't go any tighter than that. And check it out, looks pretty good. All I have to do is clean up my coolant mess and that part's done. So I've taken our wiring harness and I've already routed it sort of behind the distributor because I want this half, the ECM half, to go behind the engine and run and look really clean and nice, but put that over there. This half is what actually connects to the fuel injection itself and a couple of sensors, so this has to come up here, and then this half is going to be dictated where it is by the length of the harness, so I want to get that just right already, and then we can run these connectors and plug all those in, because I don't want to modify this harness. I think it looks really nice the way it is, and I don't really want to disturb anything if there's, impedance in the line or whatever, so I'm going to keep everything stock length. You can change yours if you wish. So the very first thing we're going to do is plug in our map sensor. This is exciting. Very first plug-in of our fuel injection kit. Oh yeah. And then we can grab our throttle positioning sensor. That's this guy here. It's the round one. Put that into its spot. Do you hear that? Nice click. Very cool. So on the front side of the EFI hat, it's actually injector number 1 and injector number 2. So go ahead and grab those connectors and plug those guys in. Kind of goes upside down till you hear that nice reassuring click. There we go. Half of our fuel injectors are already plugged in, and it looks fantastic. And then we can plug in our coolant temp sender. Just like that. Nice. So on the back side of our EFI hat, this is injector number 4, and this is injector number 3. So I'm going to actually plug in, you know what, I'm going to plug number 3 in first. I think that'll be easier. Nice. And then number 4, which is on the driver's side. Excellent. And then our IAC is going to plug in like that. Oh yeah. So the next part's pretty exciting. I already have our ECM plugged into our main harness, and I'm going to mount it on my firewall. Now where you want to mount this is totally up to you. If you want to put it inside, I encourage you to do so. But I really like the Summit logo. I think it looks snazzy, so I'm going to mount it probably something like this. Yeah, I'm thinking something like that looks pretty good. So I noticed there's a bit of a gap between the ECM and the firewall, so I have these spacers. One of them I had, and actually ran next door, and my neighbor lathed me another one, which is awesome, but they are available at hardware stores. You can just get spacers. There we go, that looks pretty snazzy. Oh yeah. Oh my goodness, doesn't that look awesome? Cool, now we can route our wires throughout the rest of our car. So I've ran the O2 sensor side of the harness down on the back side of the transmission, and that's going to vary car to car, and honestly there's really not enough space for me to show you. Honestly, I can't even get my hands up there. I had to use like a grabby claw tool. So there's really nothing to show. Just route this so it doesn't get next to anything that gets hot or moves. You want to avoid that. And then we can plug them in, make sure the connectors go in the right way. It only goes one way. It'll make a nice click like that. And then I'm just going to loop it like this and store it up in a way. Ooh, like that. That's not bad. Yeah, like that. And I'll probably put a zip tie right there so it can't fall down there. You don't want it anywhere near the drive shaft or the exhaust. So the next thing we're going to worry about is plugging in our fanned ground. Now notice this, I said ground, that's right. This is how the machine operates, is the ECM operates by connecting the ground for the fan relay. So right here where it says fan, I have already connected that into blue, so our fan wire ground is blue, and it's important to remember that. So over there is where we were earlier, and I ran our blue wire down inside that harness there. You can kind of see at the end of my finger. Came into here, came down, joined into this wiring harness, came around, put it inside of this harness, came down, around, broke it out of my harness, came around, and check this out. I hooked it into the ground for the signal of our relay. Instead of controlling the power, the computer controls the ground. And it's a lot easier on the electronics for it to do that. So I used to have it over here on the ground, and then it would just come on with the key. Now, the fan should only come on when the computer says, hey, engine's too hot, turn the fan on. So this is really good. I'm going to zip tie this up, make this look a little more tidy, but this just shows you exactly how it should be hooked up right into your fan relay, just like that. This is awesome. So the next thing we're going to do is worry about the ground for the system. Now, we're underneath the engine. You can see our engine block, and I noticed this little boss sticking out on the block, and I found the bolt for that. On mine, it's 1/2 inch by 20. Yours can be whatever you want, though. You can put it on the frame, you can put it on the engine block, on the head, whatever works and makes most amount of sense for you. I've already opened the ground big enough so it'll actually fit the bolt, and I can just install that guy, and then our whole system will be nice and grounded. nice and snug on that guy, and check it out, our ground's all done. So for the positive side of the equation, we already have our ground over there, right there, we saw in the last shot. We have up here, check that out, where it says battery, that label, that was from our kit. And I've already attached it to this lug on our starter. That's our main power lug. That's where our distribution for our power goes. Now, you could attach this to the positive terminal of your battery if that's more convenient to you, or the back of your alternator. It just depends on your build. For cleanliness, I like this because then everything's kind of hidden in a way, and I really think it's going to look nice. So let's go ahead and talk about the power for our fuel pump. We already put the ground on, remember? That red wire on your screen is actually the wire from the kit, and I have it down going on top of the transmission cross member. There's our label, our fuel pump. And then I put into a butt connector some more red wire, and I just kind of routed it here next to my fuel line and main power feed for the car. Up and around, away from anything that gets hot, anything that moves. There's plenty of clearance between that muffler tube, or exhaust tube, and all of that, trust me. And then I have it going down through that cushion clamp around my regulator, zip tied to the fuel line, and then feeding into the top of our fuel tank. And that's really what it should look like when you're all done. So our fuel pump is all done. Our fuel system is just about finished. So now let's talk about where we are in wiring our fuel injection system. I have removed the spark plug wires here on the passenger bank. This just for instructional purposes. You don't need to do that. I'm just doing that because it makes everything a little bit easier. We have two more wires to wire up here, this orange one, and this is from Key On, I believe is the label on the stock wiring harness. Now this wire is really important because this actually signals the ECM to turn on and function. So it needs to go to a power source that's on with the key, off with the key, but is also on during cranking, and that can be a little tricky to find sometimes. So I think the best way to go about that is to put it on the positive side of the coil. So that's what I'm going to do. Conversely, the tack in right here is going to go on the negative side of the coil, and that's going to tell the computer basically how fast the engine's spinning. So that just needs to go on either side of our coil, and it's really easy. So I've already loosened the nuts on my coil here. I'm going to do the positive first. It doesn't really matter which one you do first because everything's unplugged anyway. Take our orange guy. I already put the eyelet on there that I need. Grab my 3/8 nut driver and just snug that down. Oh, like that. That's fantastic. Then we can do the same thing for our brown wire, or tack in wire. There we go. Put that guy on there. Oh yeah, cruising right along. So the very final thing we have to plug in is actually the little screen controller itself. I found this hole on my firewall, but it's just a little too small, so I'm gonna step it out with my step bit. And that should be big enough to where I can feed the connector through and plug it into my ECU. So now I'm on the inside of the car, and I'm just going to feed the connector through. So this is the wire for our controller, and there are a bunch of different ways you can do that. Put a grommet on there, run it around, have it underneath your hood, however you want to do it. So now the second to the last thing we're going to plug in is the power for our screen, and that's this red and black wired connector. Push that in. Oh yeah, that looks awesome. And then the very last thing we're gonna plug in is the data, and that's just like a regular audio jack. Together like that, snap it together, stash it down in a way so it looks nice and pretty. And we are about ready. So you joined me inside my interior for my 67 Camaro. Please excuse the rustic nature of the inside. It is still under construction. So we're going to take our screen out of our bag finally. Oh yeah. And then we can find our USB-C, which is right here, and plug that in either way because it's USB-C. Oh yeah, check that out. Now, when we put the key in the ignition position, this screen should boot up. So I have my tank of 91 octane. I already have a tube going down there because the fill port on Camaro is a little goofy. It's actually at like a negative angle, so it's like super tough. So I'm just gonna put 5 gallons into it. I don't wanna fill the tank completely up in case there's a problem. There shouldn't be. And I'm gonna go ahead and look down beneath it just to check, make sure it's not just gushing gas all over the floor, and it isn't. So that is excellent. and we can just wait until the 5 gallons is finished. Now's the time to reconnect our negative terminal. Now when you're putting this back on, especially because we've added something new to the car, we're gonna go ahead and just touch the terminal to it very lightly, like this. See how there's no spark? That is excellent. So then I can put the whole thing on. And I'm actually gonna leave it loose just in case there's a problem so I can come back here and take it off real fast, but more than likely it'll be fine to tighten. So I have my nice stainless steel bowl here. You really want a stainless steel bowl. Fuel can eat through just about anything except for stainless steel basically. And what we're gonna do is take our -6 line off of our EFI hat and we're gonna point it down into the bowl and we're going to purge the line. So we're gonna put the key to the ignition position but not start it. Yeah. There we go. There's a little bit. Let's do one more. Oh, that's flowing nice. Perfect. So that, you know that there's nothing bad inside of there, any kind of fuzzies from the end line, something like that. So we can take that bowl away and then hook our fuel line up. So we can just grab our -6 wrench and snug that guy up there. Oh yeah, that's perfect. So before we try to start it, go ahead and remove our protective tape here. Excellent. So next thing we're going to do now that the system is basically complete, we're going to turn the key on and let the system pressurize, and then I'm going to look underneath the car, I'm going to look at all my fittings, I'm going to look at where it comes into the EFI hat, and if there's any leaks, I need to fix those. I just looked under the car, no leaks, and no leaks here. So this screen actually turns on without the key, which is kind of neat. You can just do a little tour dashboard. You can do it with your, your different units, how you want to set that up. How it comes stock is good for me. Large gauges, I've already selected RPM and temperature and fan, because why not? And then we can hit enter, and then it'll show us our gauges kind of in real time. The engine's not on, so it's not going to show us just that just yet. Okay, so I have my key to the ignition position. I'm going to go down and select number 4, initial setup. Go to engine setup. Cylinders 8, correct, but our cubes need to go up on mine to 468. Yours is going to be whatever yours is. And then after every change, you hit OK. Go down. I'm going to put my cam at number 3. Push OK. Set the red limit. We're going to put that at 6,800, but it's going to vary for you. Idle warm RPM. I'm actually going to put mine up to 850. And then reset fuel learn. I'm going to put 1. Now we're going to turn the key off. There we go. The handheld's not going to turn off, but we're going to turn that off for 15 full seconds. So let's go ahead and try it and crank over the engine. So now what we finally get to do is start our engine for the first time with EFI. Now it might run high, it might idle too much, it might idle too low, and you have to keep it alive. We're just going to do our best to keep it alive to come up to engine temperature. And so let's go ahead and try starting it. Always a good idea to keep a fire extinguisher handy as well. Adjusted the idle down a bit. Now what I'm going to do is let it warm up and it's going to learn how to run, but it sounds awesome. Now before we get too excited and go driving, it's always a good idea to put your air cleaner on. I already have my 1/4-20 carburetor stud here. Got my jam nut. Put that down, tighten her down. Looks pretty good. Take my wing nut off. Then we can put our seal right there. Oh, it fits so nice. Ooh, that is a tight fit. There you go. Then we can put the bottom of our air cleaner on, just like that. Looks great. And then our crowning jewel here on top of our amazing fuel injection system. Our air cleaner. Make sure it's facing, make sure it's all facing towards you so it looks good. It's half a going racing, man. Oh yeah, now we're ready for a test drive.
so now the install's all done, the setup's complete, this thing's ready to rock. Just listen to the snappiness. Oh yeah. Let's take it for a spin and compare it with our carburetor. Okay, so before, same bit of road, we're gonna see if it does the bog and die thing. Nope, does not do a bog and die. It did a little snap and a pop, but I think it's learning. I think the computer's actively learning at all kinds of different RPM ranges and throttle positions. So it's really important to get out and drive the car. Racing EFI hat. Here's another really cool thing about the EFI. The throttle response is immediate. There's no hesitation. That's as quick as it can possibly be, and it is awesome. And check this out, our final product, our air cleaner is on there. You can see our EFI box, but you could hide that if you really wanted to. And look, basically no one's gonna be able to tell that you're running an EFI solution. It looks like an old hot rod, and that is so cool. So that is how to bring your car into the future with Summit Racing's EFI. I have to say, this was really easy. You really could knock this out in a day or two, especially if you're not filming like I am. It is just that simple. Honestly, the hardest part is running the fuel line. That's it. That's like the hardest part, and putting the new fuel pump in the tank. Everything else was a breeze. You just set it up, you tell it your base parameters, start it up, set your idle, and you're basically ready to rock. I do want to say that the car really wants to drive for a while. It wants to learn itself. So if it's kind of popping and missing a little bit, that's okay. Just let the computer figure it out, and it's going to rich and lean in accordance to, you know, whatever the O2 sensor is doing and whatever the computer's thinking. So that is something you got to remember when you're driving around. It can take up to like 50 miles for that computer to fully learn. Obviously, I'm not going to show myself driving 50 miles. It's just silly. But from what I can tell, this thing is so snappy. The throttle response is so good. I can really see why my tuner, Joe, said it was really the best system he had worked with. And I have to agree with the limited experience I have. This EFI setup is a gem. The link is down below in the description. Thank you so very much for watching. If you found this video helpful at all, please consider